Let's have a look at this classic Harley-Davidson. We'll put it on the lift and I'll give you a brief tour of the bike.
This is my 1969 Harley-Davidson FL with the Shovelhead engine from 1970. Supposedly, as I was told when I bought it 4 years ago, that this bicycle was one among a few that were imported to Denmark from Iraq, where it was supposed to have been running as a police motorcycle as part of a donation from the United States back in the 70s. Whether the story is true, I do not know, but at least that's what I've been told about the past of this bike. I'll just give you a brief tour and show you some of the modifications that I've made to the bike for the past 4 years when I've owned it. And let's start at the front end. Here you can see that we have a disc brake, which was not original back in 1969. Originally it was a drum brake. I had this installed when I bought the bike because it weighs 330 kilograms without the driver, and I would like a bike of this weight to be able to stop as well, and the front brake is very important. So I had it replaced. This is a Fat Boy front fork actually, and it is, I know it's a modification of the originality of the bike, but it's just one among many on this bicycle, and still with Harley-Davidson parts, so you can say it's a hybrid, living up to the more modern standards of motorcycling and with a focus on safety. So the disc brake operates really nice and makes sure that I can stop. Also the front fender here, you have a two-tone paint on the bicycle, this greenish petroleum color in combination with the pearl white. Whether it's original, I do not know, but it's nice, and it's not very common on these types of Harley-Davidsons to see this color combination. So it's always a good topic for conversation when having a break during a ride. Here are the front lights, the light bar with the extra overtaking lights. Make sure that cars have no trouble in seeing you when it's dark, so I like that. The control of the electrics, I installed an M.unit blue. I replaced all the wiring, so no original relays, no gremlins in the electrical system. I'll give you a tour of that M.unit and how it works in another video. It controls the lights, it controls the turn signals, the horn. There's an alarm function. I can check the battery level, and it's quite invisible. It's mounted in here in the headlight housing, so of course not visible to anyone. It just looks like an old-fashioned Harley-Davidson, but with totally modern electronic control underneath. Coming up to the handlebars, you got the original Harley-Davidson mirrors. And also I replaced the grips with a more modern type. These are the ones that were written on Harley-Davidsons from 1981 to 1995. The original ones on this bike were of the type where you have these little round black buttons. The problem is that they tended to fall off, so when going for a ride you would never be sure that all the buttons were still there when arriving back home. So I just replaced it with these. They look really nice and they work like a charm. So just an upgrade as I see it. The speedometer, the original one did not work anymore, so I replaced it with this one and grabbed the opportunity to put in a rev counter as well. And here's the tank, two-tone. Same as the Fenders. Coming down to the engine, I took it all apart last winter, all the way down to the flywheel, cleaning everything, painting the cylinders, taking everything apart and replacing all worn parts in the cylinder heads. I grinded the valves into the seat to make sure that they are tight and provides a good seal, and it runs really great. I installed an oil cooler on it. It's not that I live in the hottest country on earth, but it gets hot during the summer, so it's nice to have this extra cooling feature on the oil. And it has an automatic valve on it as well, so this valve opens when the oil reaches operating temperature, and until then it's just a bypass, and the oil circulates as normal in the oil system. And behind the cover here, I replaced the clutch plates and also the tensioner for the primary chain. I put in an automatic tensioner to make sure that the chain is nice and tight as it should be, and it had removed any clunking sounds from gear shifting actually, so that's a really nice upgrade. I cannot show you here because it's behind the covers, but everything behind there is new or in good original running condition. Also the ignition coil, I replaced that with the right ohms to fit the bike. Here you have the oil cooler, which is also new. When I bought the bike, it was fitted with a horseshoe aftermarket model with a battery sitting in the middle of it. Started to rust and did not really look original, so I put this one on instead, and just thought that it's good to come close to the original appearance of the bike. Temperature gauge in the cap, so I can see the operating temperature of the oil. The seat is a Mustang seat. I imported it from the United States, and it's really a comfortable ride. It also has a size that fits the general size of this bike, so I'm very pleased with this seat. You have the rear suspension. These are brand new, progressive, so I can switch between having a very soft suspension up until a very hard suspension, depending on the weight, if I'm carrying a passenger. And it provides a really smooth ride. This bike actually, you feel like you're soaring down the road when driving this combination of the Fat Boy modern front fork and this progressive suspension on the rear. The frame is painted at a local auto paint shop. I had this done last winter when the bike was all torn apart, going through every bit and bolt to make sure that it's in good condition. And it looks really nice. When I got the bike, it had a silver colored paint to the frame, which somehow just didn't make the bike appear as it should, in my opinion. So I had it painted black, and it looks really nice. Here on the back, brakes are all new. I also installed these protective plates for the axle, so when adjusting the rear axle I won't be chipping the black paint, which is a nice feature. Coming around to the back of the bike, you can see the original paint. Some places there are small chips and scratches, but it doesn't really appear to have an effect on an impression that in general it's in really good condition, this bike, although being more than 50 years old. So on the right side we have the exhaust. It's a 2-in-2 Pauco with slash cut mufflers. Gives a really subtle, deep rumbling tone to the bike, which I like. And here we have the battery case. This is also new. I replaced that alongside replacing also the oil tank. And here for the transmission, I took out the kicker pedal because I very rarely used it. It has electrical start. It's an Electra Glide model. And so I just put on a side cover where the kicker pedal is eliminated. And it cleans up the right side of the bike. Also, these aftermarket Pauco mufflers, they were actually in conflict with the kicker pedal. So I wasn't really able to use the kicker pedal after installing these exhaust pipes. So just eliminating that took care of that problem. There's the oil pressure gauge installed in just above the oil pump. And behind the air filter cover we have actually this winter's project, which was replacing the carburetor for a constant velocity or CV model, which were used by Harley-Davidson up until they went for electronic ignition instead. This runs really great, I must say, on this Harley-Davidson. It's taken a few trials and errors to get the jet sizing correct, and also to choose the right needle for this carburetor. But now it's there. The jets are all good, and the mixture screw, I found the setting that makes the bike run really well. I just have to be sure that it's not running too rich, but at least it's not lean, and it revs nicely, and it doesn't spit at all. And I had some trouble with this previously. Now it's in good condition. So that was a great upgrade. Under here we have the electronic ignition, also an upgrade. I can't show you because it's behind the cover, but it's a really smooth, well-running bike. Also an upgrade here is the horn. This is an air horn, provides a sound so that nobody's in doubt that there's somebody who wants to signal something when I press the horn button. It makes a good noise, I must say. And coming back up here to the front of the bike, just to show you my rider bell for good fortune. And that's about it. My 1970 Harley-Davidson FL Electra Glide. I do have one or two small projects coming up, but otherwise it's springtime and riding time beginning. So with summer coming up, it's not time to be in the workshop, it's time to be out on the streets instead. One project that I have coming up is actually changing the bolts on the carburetor. It's fitted now with bolts, which makes it a bit difficult to unmount and reinstall the carburetor. I'll be putting in some rods instead, so that I can just slide it in from the right side and mount it with nuts and protect the threads in the carburetor. So that's just a small job coming up, but I'll be showing you how that is done. And otherwise, I'll just say that I hope you enjoyed this brief tour of my 1970-1969 Harley-Davidson FL. Thank you for watching.